The day the world ended began with applause. Golden confetti rained from the ceiling of the World Ranking Association's grand auditorium, drifting through beams of artificial light like fragments of a manufactured dream. Billions watched the live broadcast from every corner of the planet, giant screens in city plazas, holographic projections in luxury towers. Even cracked televisions in rundown apartments where hope was rationed as tightly as electricity. On the colossal screen behind the stage, glowing numbers shifted and reorganized themselves in real time. The Global Awakening Rankings. A system that measured human worth in cold, absolute digits. At the very top stood Rank 1, the Sword Saint of the East, his name shining in brilliant gold. Beneath him, Rank 2 through Rank 10 radiated in platinum frames, their portraits adorned with animated sigils representing their abilities: time acceleration, gravity distortion, divine flame manipulation. They were heroes, celebrities, demigods in tailored suits. And at the very bottom of that towering hierarchy, Rank 9999. Jin Taeyeon. His name appeared in dull gray, so faint it almost blended into the background. In the auditorium's farthest corner, where the lighting didn't quite reach and the cameras never lingered, Taeyeon stood alone. No one clapped for him. No one even looked in his direction. The ranking system had awakened 12 years ago, the same day the first dungeon tore open the sky above Seoul. A shimmering blue fracture had split reality apart, and from it poured creatures that defied biology and sanity. Humanity had panicked, until certain individuals began to awaken powers. Strength beyond logic. Magic that bent physics. Skills displayed through translucent status windows only the awakened could see. With it came the system. Levels. Stats. Titles. And rankings. The association claimed it existed for fairness and efficiency. A transparent metric to identify humanity's defenders. To allocate resources properly. To ensure the strongest stood at the front lines. But the rankings didn't just measure strength. They decided everything. Housing priority. Medical access. Dungeon entry rights. Corporate sponsorships. Even legal immunity in certain cases. The higher your number, the more human you were considered. And Jin Taeyeon was barely considered human at all. He stared up at the massive screen as his name flickered beneath thousands of others. Rank 9999. F-Class. A faint murmur passed through nearby awakened. Isn't that the guy who barely cleared a D-rank tutorial dungeon? They should just revoke his license. He's a waste of resources. Imagine being officially labeled the weakest in the world. Their laughter wasn't loud, but it didn't need to be. Taeyeon had grown used to the sound. He lowered his eyes, clenching his fists until his knuckles turned white. His status window hovered faintly in front of him. Name, Jin Taeyeon. Level, 27. Class, none. Primary stats, below average. Unique skill, none. Rank, 9999. None. The cruelest word in the system. He had trained. Bled. Nearly died dozens of times in low-tier dungeons just to scrape together experience points. But no matter how hard he pushed himself, his stat growth plateaued unnaturally fast. It was as if an invisible ceiling pressed down on him. Meanwhile, prodigies leapt forward effortlessly. As the ceremony continued, Rank 1 stepped up to the podium, unsheathing his radiant blade just enough for its divine aura to ripple across the crowd. Cheers erupted. Today, the Sword Saint declared, voice amplified across continents, we celebrate humanity's continued dominance over the dungeons. As long as the ranking system stands, we will never fall. Thunderous applause. Taeyeon felt something bitter twist in his chest. Never fall. The air shifted. It was subtle at first, a vibration beneath the polished marble floor. The chandeliers trembled. A faint distortion shimmered above the stage. The Sword Saint paused mid-sentence. Then the world screamed. The sky above the capital shattered like glass. Not metaphorically. Physically. A crack, vast and jagged, split open the heavens, spilling darkness instead of light. From within that abyss, something massive moved. Emergency alarms detonated across the city. Unidentified spatial distortion detected. Mana density exceeding measurable limits. The live broadcast feed glitched, cutting between panicked camera angles. The crack expanded, devouring blue sky. Black mist poured downward like an inverted waterfall, swallowing skyscrapers whole. People in the streets froze as shadowy limbs, too large, too many, emerged from the fracture. A catastrophic dungeon break. Not a gate. Not a scheduled raid. A full-scale rupture. The auditorium descended into chaos. SSS rankers to the front. Deploy barriers. Top-ranked awakened shot toward the ceiling in blinding streaks of light. Firestorms ignited midair. Gravity wells distorted space. Taeyeon stood paralyzed as the shockwave hit. The building's reinforced walls crumbled like sand. Glass exploded inward. The ground split open beneath the stage, swallowing rows of seats, and people with them. Screams replaced applause. Outside, the city was already dying. Colossal creatures descended through the black rift, amorphous horrors with layered jaws and pulsating cores of dark mana. Each step they took warped gravity. Buildings folded inward as if crushed by invisible hands. The Sword Saint slashed upward, a beam of golden energy cleaving through the sky. It struck one of the descending entities, and dissipated harmlessly. Silence followed. Then the creature retaliated. A pulse of darkness expanded outward, erasing everything it touched. Half the top 10 rankers vanished instantly. Not killed. Erased. Their status signals blinked out simultaneously. Taeyeon's heart slammed against his ribs. This wasn't in the database. This wasn't a known dungeon category. The ranking system flickered violently in his vision. Emergency override detected. Threat level, uncalculable. Uncalculable. For the first time since its creation, the system had no number. The Sword Saint roared, activating his ultimate skill. His blade ignited with concentrated divinity, carving a radiant arc across the sky. It tore through one monster's outer shell, only for 3 more to emerge from the rift. And behind them, something worse. A massive silhouette shifted within the fracture itself. An eye opened, vast as a stadium, glowing crimson with cold, indifferent intelligence. Taeyeon felt it look at him. No. At all of them. Judging. Measuring. The elites fought desperately, unleashing attacks that once leveled entire mountain ranges. But every strike seemed calculated, anticipated, nullified. As if the enemy understood the system better than they did. Within minutes, rank 3 fell. Then rank 5. The Sword Saint screamed as his arm was severed by a beam of condensed void. So much for never falling, Taeyeon whispered bitterly. The auditorium collapsed completely, forcing survivors into the streets. Smoke and mana storms filled the air. Communication networks failed. Taeyeon stumbled through debris, helping an injured civilian to their feet. He should run. He knew he should. An F rank had no place here. But as he turned a corner, he saw it. A little girl, no older than 7, trapped beneath a slab of concrete. Her small hands pushed uselessly against the weight pinning her legs. Tears streaked her dust-covered face. Help, please, above her, a shadow loomed. One of the lesser creatures, still towering at 10 meters tall, dragged itself forward, its jagged limbs carving trenches into the asphalt. Taeyeon's instincts screamed at him to hide. He couldn't beat that thing. He knew it. The system knew it. But the girl's eyes met his. And something inside him snapped. His entire life, he had been told he was useless. That his number defined him. That risking resources on someone like him was inefficient. If he ran now, then the ranking was right. He forced his trembling legs to move. Hey, he shouted, grabbing a broken steel rod from the rubble. The monster's head twisted toward him, faceless skin rippling as it sensed his minimal mana signature. Probably not even worth killing. Taeyeon laughed breathlessly. Yeah. I know. I'm weak. He activated his only active skill, minor physical reinforcement. A pathetic boost compared to the godlike abilities of the elites. But it was enough to swing. He charged. The steel rod shattered on impact against the creature's hide. Pain exploded through his arms as bone cracked. The monster retaliated instantly, slamming him into a nearby wall. His vision blurred. Status, critical condition. He coughed blood, struggling to stand. The girl sobbed behind him. The creature raised a limb to finish him. Taeyeon's thoughts drifted strangely calm. So this is it. Rank 9999. The weakest awakened alive. He had trained until his muscles tore. Fought through ridicule. Endured discrimination in dungeon allocations where higher ranks received premium gear while he was handed leftovers. And when the world truly needed saving, the strongest had failed. He pushed himself upright one last time, planting his feet between the monster and the child. If strength is just a number, he muttered hoarsely, then your system is broken. The limb descended. He didn't dodge. He grabbed the girl instead, twisting his body to shield her. Impact. Agony unlike anything he'd ever felt ripped through him. His torso caved inward as the force pulverized bone and ruptured organs. The world dimmed to red. But the girl lived. The creature lost interest, turning away as Taeyeon collapsed. His status window flickered violently. HP 0. He lay there, fading, the sky above still consumed by that monstrous eye. Distantly, he saw the sword saint fall from the air, impaled. So this is how humanity ends. Not because they were weak, but because they trusted a system that reduced them to numbers. Darkness crept in from the edges of his vision. Then, a sound. Not from the battlefield. From within. A sharp, discordant chime. His status window, which had been dimming, suddenly glitched. Letters scrambled. Stats inverted. The ranking number spun wildly. Warning. System instability detected. Taeyeon blinked weakly. No one else reacted. The monsters continued their slaughter. But in his vision, a hidden layer peeled back, like code behind reality. Red text flooded his sight. Critical discrepancy identified. Subject, Jean Taeyeon. Rank assignment, inconsistent with growth potential. System error accumulation, 99%. His fading heart thudded once. Growth potential. For the first time, his ranking number flickered. 9,999. 9,998. 10,234. Error. The system voice, usually emotionless, distorted. Emergency protocol engaged. Preventing collapse of core structure. Taeyeon's lips trembled. Collapse. Above, the massive crimson eye narrowed. As if it sensed something wrong. The red text intensified, filling his entire field of vision. System critical failure. Initiating rollback. Rollback. His final thought wasn't fear. It was fury. If there was even the slightest chance, if this broken system was admitting a mistake, then he would tear it apart. The world shattered into fragments of light. Sound reversed. The monster's roar warped backward into silence. Debris lifted from the ground, reforming buildings in reverse collapse. Blood flowed upward into wounds. The crimson eye in the sky blinked out as the fracture sealed itself. Time rewound. Taeyeon's body reassembled, bones knitting, organs restoring. The crushing pain vanished. He gasped, and found himself standing once more beneath the golden lights of the ranking ceremony. Confetti drifting gently through the air. The sword saint mid-speech. As long as the ranking system stands, we will never fall. Taeyeon's breath hitched. His hands were whole. His clothes unbloodied. The giant screen behind the stage displayed the rankings again. At the very bottom, rank 9,999. Jean Taeyeon. But this time, he remembered. Every scream. Every failure. Every erased hero. His heart pounded, not with despair. With certainty. The day the world ended had just begun. And this time, he would break the system before it broke them. Pain didn't greet him when he opened his eyes. There was no suffocating dust in his lungs, no distant echo of screams, no crimson sky splitting open like a wound in reality. Instead, there was fluorescent lighting. Cold. Sterile. Unforgiving. Jean Taeyeon inhaled sharply and sat upright. White walls. A narrow examination bed. The faint scent of disinfectant. Across from him, a glass panel separated the evaluation chamber from a control room filled with analysts in association uniforms. On the wall above the glass, glowing in bright blue letters, Awakener Aptitude Assessment, Final Results. His heart nearly stopped. No, this day. He looked down at his hands. Unscarred. Unbroken. Alive. 3 years. He had returned to 3 years ago, to the day he first received his official ranking. The memory slammed into him all at once. The humiliation. The snickers. The way the examiner had sighed in disappointment before announcing his score to the entire hall. His chest tightened. But layered over that memory was something far heavier. The apocalypse. The sky cracking open. The sword saint falling from the heavens like a broken idol. The little girl crying beneath rubble. Taeyeon staggered off the bed, his legs trembling, not from weakness, but from disbelief. This isn't a dream. The glass door slid open with a mechanical hiss. A young association staff member entered, tablet in hand, expression neutral and professionally detached. Jean Taeyeon, she read flatly. Please prepare to receive your official evaluation. Her voice was identical to how he remembered it. He stared at her as if she were a ghost. You don't remember anything strange? He asked before he could stop himself. She blinked, confused. Strange? This is a standardized evaluation process. Of course. For her, nothing had happened. The world had not ended. The sky had not shattered. He swallowed hard. So it really was a rollback. The system had rewound time. But why? His mind replayed the red notification he'd seen as he lay dying. System critical failure. Initiating rollback. Failure. Because of him. Because of the ranking discrepancy. Please extend your hand, the examiner said, activating the scanning device. A ring of light enveloped his wrist. The familiar sensation of mana resonance vibrated through his veins. The system interface flickered into existence before his eyes. Only visible to him. Name, Jean Taeyeon. Age, 19. Class, unassigned. Level, 1. Primary stats, strength, 4 agility, 5 vitality, 4 intelligence, 6 mana, 3 below average across all metrics. And then, rank, F. The letter burned like acid. He remembered what would happen next. The staff would whisper. His data would be uploaded to the global ranking server. He would officially become rank 9999. The weakest awakened alive. But something felt wrong. The edges of his status window flickered. The blue interface distorted, pixels warping like corrupted code. The staff member frowned at her tablet. That's odd. On the large screen behind the glass, his name appeared, then glitched violently. The number that should have followed his name refused to stabilize. Instead of a clean 9999, the digits scrambled. 9999. 0. 12401. 8888. Error, the analysts began murmuring. Server lag. Recalibrating mana index, Taeyeon's breath caught. In his personal interface, where the rank letter F had been displayed, the text trembled, and then vanished. In its place, rank, undefined. The word pulsed faintly, as if uncertain. His pulse quickened. This hadn't happened the first time. Back then, the system had been mercilessly precise. So what changed? Me. He remembered. He remembered the end. The catastrophic dungeon break. The elites failing. The system admitting a discrepancy. A dangerous thought crept into his mind. If the system rewound time because something went wrong, then perhaps it wasn't perfect. Perhaps it wasn't absolute. Please remain still, the examiner said, tapping her earpiece nervously. We're experiencing minor interference. Interference. The analysts tried recalculating his stats 3 times. Each attempt produced inconsistent data. His mana reading fluctuated by decimals that shouldn't exist at level 1. Finally, the chief evaluator waved dismissively. Assign provisional F rank, he said. We'll correct server inconsistencies later. The staff member nodded and forced a polite smile. Congratulations. You have been designated F rank. The word hit him, but it didn't feel the same. Because in his vision, the status window still displayed, rank, undefined not F, undefined. He stepped out of the evaluation chamber into the main hall, where dozens of newly awakened youths celebrated their results. Some cheered as B rankers. A handful cried tears of joy at receiving C rank, high enough to secure government training sponsorship. When Taeyeon emerged, a few glanced at him. What did you get? He hesitated. F, snickers followed. Unlucky. Guess the dungeon cleaning crews need workers too. He felt the sting, but it didn't pierce as deeply as before. Because he knew something they didn't. 3 years from now, the so-called top ranks would fall like dominoes. The ranking system would fail. And the world would end. As he exited the association building, sunlight struck his face. The sky was intact. Blue. Peaceful. His chest tightened. He had another chance. Not just to survive. To change everything. He focused inward, summoning his status window again. The distorted interface reappeared instantly. The word undefined pulsed. Below his stats, something new blinked faintly. Hidden attribute detected. His heart skipped. That hadn't existed before. He reached out mentally, trying to access it. Access denied. Insufficient error threshold. Error threshold. The phrase sent a chill down his spine. System error accumulation, 1%. 1%. The number hovered at the bottom of the screen, red and subtle. He didn't understand. But he remembered the red flood of text from his death. System error accumulation, 99%. A realization dawned slowly. The system had identified a discrepancy in him before the rollback. A mismatch between assigned rank and growth potential. Maybe the rollback hadn't reset everything perfectly. Maybe it couldn't. He stopped walking. What if he wasn't just sent back? What if he carried a flaw in the system itself? His breathing quickened. He needed to test it. That afternoon, instead of returning home, Taeyeon headed straight for the municipal training facility, a place F rankers used to grind basic stats through repetitive exercises. The building was crowded with low-tier awakened swinging dull blades at practice dummies. He stepped into an empty corner and summoned his interface again. Strength, 4, he clenched his fist. Normally, stat growth required experience points earned through dungeon combat. It was rigid. Structured. But as he stared at the strength number, he felt something strange. As if the stat wasn't fixed. As if it could be moved. Carefully, experimentally, he focused on the number. He imagined dragging it upward. For a split second, the interface resisted. Then it flickered. Strength, 5, his eyes widened. No notification. No level-up chime. He felt it instantly, his muscles tightening, density increasing. He staggered slightly at the unfamiliar surge of power. What? The stat dropped back to 4. A warning flashed. Unauthorized modification detected. System error accumulation, 3%. His pulse pounded in his ears. He had moved a stat point without leveling up. That was impossible. Stats were locked behind experience thresholds. The system governed them absolutely. Unless the system itself was unstable around him. He swallowed hard and tried again, this time more forcefully. Strength, 4-6. The interface glitched violently, numbers overlapping. Pain shot through his arm as muscles expanded too quickly. He gasped, gripping his forearm. Then the number stabilized at 6. System error accumulation, 7%. A grin slowly spread across his face. He punched the training dummy. The reinforced leather exploded inward. Nearby F rankers froze. Hey, what the hell? Taeyeon stared at his fist. That punch felt like a C ranker's output. And he was still level 1. Still officially F rank. But in his window, rank, undefined, the implication made his heart race. If rankings determined access to resources, and stats determined actual combat power, then the ranking system was simply a mediator, a limiter. And limiters could be bypassed. Over the next hour, Taeyeon experimented cautiously. He tried raising agility by 2 points. The world seemed to slow slightly as his reflexes sharpened. System error accumulation, 12%. He lowered intelligence by 1 point. It transferred instantly to mana. No cost. No experience required. The system responded with aggressive warning prompts, but it didn't stop him. It couldn't. Because his rank wasn't defined. Because something about his existence no longer fit its parameters. But there was a pattern. Every forced modification increased the error accumulation percentage. And each time it rose, the interface flickered more violently. At 15%, his entire vision distorted briefly, like a corrupted video feed. He exhaled slowly. Too reckless, and the system might correct itself. Or worse. He remembered the crimson eye in the sky. The uncalculable threat. A cold realization crept in. What if the ranking system wasn't just a measurement tool? What if it was connected to whatever had descended that day? His jaw tightened. The elites had trusted the system completely. And they died. That night, lying in his small apartment, Taeyeon stared at the ceiling. He replayed the apocalypse in vivid detail. The way the dungeon creatures adapted to the top rankers' abilities. As if they understood exactly how strong each opponent was. As if they were reading the same numbers. A chill ran down his spine. If the ranking system quantified humanity's power, then any entity that accessed that data would know precisely how to counter it. A system meant to protect them might have exposed them instead. He sat up abruptly. If the ranking system determines power, he whispered into the darkness, what happens if it can't? His status window materialized again. Error accumulation, 15%. Hidden attribute, locked. Rank, undefined. He focused on the error percentage. It wasn't just a warning. It was a resource. The more the system glitched, the more flexible his stats became. He tried something bolder. He raised strength to 10. The interface convulsed. Pain exploded through his body as raw power surged violently through unconditioned muscles. Veins bulged. His vision blurred. System error accumulation, 25%. Unauthorized scaling detected. For a terrifying moment, everything froze. The interface dimmed. He felt as if something was looking at him. Not physically. Systemically. Monitoring. Then the warning vanished. His strength remained at 10. He collapsed back onto the bed, breathing heavily but laughing softly. Level 1. Strength 10. That was equivalent to a mid-tier D rank. And no one would know. Because externally, he was still F. Still worthless. Still beneath notice. The most dangerous place to hide. He closed his eyes, mind racing. 3 years. He had 3 years before the catastrophic dungeon break. 3 years to grow stronger. 3 years to uncover the truth behind the ranking system. 3 years to prepare for that crimson eye in the sky. But more importantly, 3 years to break the hierarchy that had shackled humanity. He imagined the ceremony 3 years from now. The sword saint declaring they would never fall. Taeyeon's lips curved into a faint, dangerous smile. This time, he murmured, I won't stand at the bottom. He would climb. Not within the system. But outside it. If rankings defined limits, then he would become undefined. And when the day the world ended came again, he would be ready. Not as rank 9999. Not as F. But as the flaw in the system itself. Jin Taeyeon stopped training like a normal awakened the moment he understood the truth. Normal training meant discipline, slow stat growth, carefully scheduled dungeon entries approved by the association, and accepting the invisible ceiling placed above F ranks. It meant respecting the system. But Taeyeon no longer believed the system deserved respect. He stood alone in the municipal training hall long after everyone else had left, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. His status window floated before him, faintly distorted at the edges like cracked glass. Name, Jean Taeyeon. Level, 3. Rank, F, provisional. Actual rank, undefined. Error accumulation, 32%. Below that, in flickering red text, something new had appeared after days of experimentation. Corrupted points. For the first time he saw that hidden counter increase. His heartbeat had nearly deafened him. The system didn't announce it with a triumphant chime. There was no fanfare. It simply appeared after he forced his stats beyond permissible parameters and endured the backlash. Corrupted points. Not earned through experience. Not recognized by the association. Not visible to anyone else. It was power born from error. And Taeyeon intended to exploit it. He exhaled slowly and raised his right hand. Minor physical reinforcement. The basic skill activated, a faint layer of mana coating his muscles. It was a beginner technique taught to all low rankers, a temporary boost that slightly enhanced strength and durability. Harmless. Limited. Safe. The system registered it instantly. Skill active, minor physical reinforcement, duration, 30 seconds, now came the part no sane awakened would attempt. He activated it again. A sharp sting shot through his nerves. Skill already active. Activation denied. Taeyeon didn't stop. He forced the command mentally, pushing mana into the same circuit twice. The air around his arm trembled violently as the system glitched. Warning, overlapping skill activation detected. Veins bulged along his forearm. His muscles swelled unnaturally as mana clashed against itself. Again, he whispered through gritted teeth. A third activation. The mana circuits in his body screamed in protest. It felt like pouring boiling water directly into his bloodstream. His knees buckled, but he remained standing. The interface flickered violently. System error accumulation, 35%. Corrupted points, 5. There it was. A reward. Not for success, but for destabilization. The reinforcement collapsed abruptly, sending him crashing to the floor as backlash ripped through his nerves. His HP dipped into the red for a brief second before stabilizing. He lay there, staring at the ceiling, sweat pooling beneath him. He had learned the pattern. The system hated contradictions. It was designed to prevent illogical stacking, stat overflow, or activation beyond established parameters. But when forced into those contradictions repeatedly, it didn't immediately erase him. It glitched. And every glitch fed him corrupted points. He rolled onto his side and laughed weakly. "I'm not leveling up," he murmured. "I'm breaking you." Over the next few weeks, Taeyeon stopped chasing experience points entirely. Instead, he chased instability. He entered low-tier practice gates, F-rank training dungeons meant for beginners, and deliberately inflicted debuffs on himself before combat. He would slash his own arm to trigger bleeding status. He would overexert mana until mana exhaustion applied. Then, with multiple negative conditions active, he would force a stat reallocation. Strength 12. Agility 9. Vitality 6. He would drag points recklessly across attributes mid-combat, creating temporary imbalances that the system struggled to process. Each time, warning. Unauthorized stat reallocation. Error accumulation, 41% corrupted points, 7. The monsters inside those training gates never stood a chance. Goblin-type creatures that once required coordinated team efforts now shattered under a single kick. Their bones splintered. Their crude weapons snapped on impact against his reinforced skin. But to outside observers, nothing made sense. Because his visible status, when scanned by dungeon monitors, still read, rank, F level, 5. One afternoon, during a supervised F-rank gate clearing, a group of rookies found themselves cornered by a mutated hobgoblin, a rare variant that had unexpectedly spawned within a supposedly safe dungeon. The hobgoblin towered over them, muscles swollen with dark mana. Its roar shook loose pebbles from the cavern ceiling. "This isn't in the briefing," one of the trainees screamed. Their assigned supervisor, a tired D-rank mercenary, hesitated. "If we retreat now, the gate destabilizes," he shouted back. The hobgoblin charged. The first trainee went down instantly, ribs crushed by a backhand swing. Panic spread like wildfire. And then, Taeyeon stepped forward. The others barely noticed him at first. The weakest one. The F rank. He rolled his shoulders once, glancing at the timer in the corner of his vision. Error accumulation, 49%. Corrupted points, 10. The numbers pulsed ominously. He had discovered something new 2 days ago. Corrupted points could be injected directly into a stat temporarily, like overclocking a machine beyond factory limits. It was dangerous. It felt like standing at the edge of a cliff with unstable ground beneath his feet. But the hobgoblin lunged. Taeyeon inhaled. Allocate 5 corrupted points to strength. The world distorted. Strength, 1217. The air cracked around him as raw force compressed into his muscles. System instability rising. He moved. To the others, it looked like he vanished. One moment he stood 10 meters away. The next, his fist was buried deep in the hobgoblin's abdomen. The impact detonated like a cannon blast. The monster's body folded inward unnaturally before launching backward through solid rock. The cavern wall exploded outward, sunlight spilling in from the other side of the dungeon's artificial boundary. Silence fell. Dust drifted slowly through the air. The hobgoblin twitched once, and went still. Dead. One punch. The D-rank supervisor stared at Taeyeon as if seeing a ghost. What did you just do? Taeyeon blinked, letting the corrupted enhancement dissipate. Strength returned to 12. The system trembled. Error accumulation, 52%. He forced a sheepish expression. Adrenaline, he offered weakly. The trainees whispered among themselves. Maybe the monster was already injured, lucky critical hit, no one considered the impossible. Because the ranking system said it was impossible. And the ranking system was law. Outside the gate, when the incident report was filed, the association attributed the hobgoblin's defeat to environmental instability and probable external weakening factors. They couldn't reconcile the data. An F rank defeating a high D rank variant with a single strike contradicted the algorithm. So they dismissed it. Taeyeon walked home under the evening sky, hands in his pockets. He should have felt triumphant. Instead, unease gnawed at him. Because over the past week, something else had appeared in his interface. At first, it was barely noticeable. A faint flicker in the top right corner. Now it was unmistakable. A small, silent countdown. Correction protocol initiating in 72 hours 14 minutes and 33 seconds hours. Minutes. Seconds. He stopped walking. Correction. His stomach twisted. Every time error accumulation crossed a new threshold, the system seemed to grow more aggressive in its warnings. Yesterday, when it hit 50%, the sky above him had flickered faintly for half a second, like a visual glitch no one else reacted to. Today, this countdown appeared. Was the system preparing to reset him? Erase him? His mind raced back to the apocalypse. The crimson eye in the sky. The entity that had watched everything. Was that the system's final form? Or something connected to it? He forced himself to breathe slowly. Panic would solve nothing. If there was a correction protocol, then the system acknowledged he was an anomaly. And anomalies were threats. He returned to his apartment and immediately began testing again, this time pushing harder. He activated minor physical reinforcement 5 times in rapid succession. Mana circuits overloaded violently. Blood trickled from his nose as his HP plummeted. Warning, critical overlap threshold exceeded. Error accumulation, 60%. Corrupted points, 15. The countdown flickered. Correction protocol initiating in 48 hours 2 minutes and 11 seconds. It had shortened. His chest tightened. The more instability he caused, the faster the correction approached. So you're adapting, he muttered darkly. The system wasn't passive. It was reactive. Intelligent. Or governed by something intelligent. He clenched his fists. Then I'll adapt faster. The next day, he registered for a C-rank dungeon support role, something an F-rank technically shouldn't qualify for. But due to a clerical oversight and a shortage of manpower, his application slipped through. The dungeon was a crumbling subway system overtaken by mana corruption. Mutated beasts infested its tunnels, feeding on condensed energy pockets. 2 C-rankers led the squad. Both glanced at Taeyeon with thinly veiled annoyance. "Stay behind us," one of them said curtly. "Don't die." Taeyeon nodded obediently. Inside the dungeon, the air was thick and damp. The walls pulsed faintly with dark veins of mana. He felt it immediately. The density was higher than the F-rank gates he'd been abusing. More strain on the system. More room for instability. As the squad advanced, a pack of corrupted hounds ambushed them from the shadows. The C-rankers engaged confidently, blades flashing. One misstep. A hidden alpha variant burst from a side tunnel, far larger than expected. It knocked one C-ranker aside, jaws clamping down on his shoulder. The other hesitated. That moment of hesitation was all it took. Taeyeon moved. Allocate all corrupted points to agility. Agility, 1126. The world slowed to a crawl. Dripping water hung suspended midair. The alpha's saliva glistened like frozen glass. He dashed forward. His blade, cheap, standard-issue steel, sliced through the alpha's neck with surgical precision. Time snapped back. The monster's head slid from its body. The remaining hounds scattered in panic. The injured C-ranker collapsed, staring up at Taeyeon in disbelief. "You're F-rank." Taeyeon didn't answer. Because at that exact moment, the countdown hit 0. Correction protocol initiating in 1 second. The dungeon trembled violently. Not from the monsters. From the system itself. The air distorted. His vision glitched into static. For a split second, he saw something layered over reality, a grid, vast and infinite, like a cosmic operating system. And within it, a presence. Cold. Observing. The system interface flashed crimson. Anomaly confirmed. Attempting forced normalization. His stats began fluctuating uncontrollably. Strength dropping. Agility resetting. Corrupted points draining. "No," he growled. He forced his will against it, reallocating points as fast as he could. The dungeon walls cracked, mana surging wildly. The C-rankers stared in horror as invisible pressure crushed the air around Taeyeon. Allocate. Reallocate. Overflow. Error accumulation, 78%. The interface screamed in fragmented text. Correction failed. The presence receded slightly. But not completely. The dungeon stabilized. Silence returned. Taeyeon fell to one knee, gasping. His stats had partially reset, but not entirely. He checked the interface. Corrupted points, 3 most had been erased. But 3 remained. The system had tried to correct him. And failed. 4 now. He rose slowly, eyes dark. The C-rankers backed away instinctively. "What are you?" one whispered. Taeyeon looked at the flickering countdown that had reappeared, this time shorter. Correction protocol initiating in 23:59 and 59 seconds AM. New cycle. The system wouldn't stop. It would keep trying to erase the anomaly. He stepped toward the dungeon exit without answering. Inside his chest, fear coiled tightly. But beneath that fear, excitement. The system was no longer an invisible god. It was a flawed machine struggling to contain him. And every time it failed, he grew stronger. "If you want to correct me," he murmured quietly, staring at the distant sky beyond the dungeon's collapsing gate, "then you'll have to break first." Somewhere far above. Beyond human sight, something was watching. And the countdown had only just begun. The countdown reset to 24 hours, but Jean Taeyeon stopped staring at it. Fear had been useful at first. It sharpened him. Forced him to experiment carefully. But now, something else burned stronger inside his chest. Suspicion. The system wasn't just reacting to him. It was protecting something. For weeks, he had been pushing its boundaries, overlapping skills, reallocating stats, triggering overflow conditions. Every time he destabilized its rules, it tried to correct him. Normalize him. Force him back into place. As if his very existence threatened a carefully constructed order. So instead of pushing blindly, Taeyeon shifted his focus outward. He needed to understand the structure he was fighting. The Ranking Association headquarters towered over the city like a cathedral dedicated to numbers. Glass walls reflected the skyline, and holographic banners displayed the current top 100 in rotating gold text. People gathered at the plaza daily, gazing up at the names like pilgrims seeking divine reassurance. The top 10 were practically royalty. They received exclusive housing in fortified districts, unlimited dungeon access, top-tier gear crafted from S-class cores, and medical regeneration privileges that ordinary awakened could never afford. Corporations competed for their endorsements. Governments bent policy around their safety. Meanwhile, F ranks like Taeyeon were assigned to sanitation raids and manhwa containment zones, jobs considered too inefficient for higher ranks. The system claimed to measure potential objectively. But Taeyeon had seen the end. He had watched SSS rankers unleash everything they had, and fail. Their power had been immense. But it hadn't grown. It had stagnated. As if they'd reached a ceiling they couldn't surpass. He entered the association building not as a challenger, but as a lowly F-rank filing a standard request. His posture was humble. His expression carefully blank. Low ranks were invisible. And invisibility was freedom. Inside the public archive wing, terminals allowed Awakened to review historical data on dungeon clear rates, ranking progression charts, and mana fluctuation trends. Most people used it to admire the steady rise of the elite. Taeyeon used it differently. He filtered for statistical growth curves of the top 50 over the past decade. At first glance, it looked impressive: sharp rises in the early years of awakening, exponential jumps in power. But then, plateau. Every single top-ranked awakened showed the same pattern. Rapid growth until reaching a threshold, then stagnation. Not gradual slowdown. Abrupt stabilization. He narrowed the search parameters, overlaying system patch updates. A cold shiver ran down his spine. Each plateau coincided with major, system calibration updates issued by the association. Publicly, these updates were explained as optimization adjustments to ensure fairness and safety. But the timing was too precise. He cross-referenced low-rank growth data. F, E, and D ranks showed something worse. Microplateaus. Repeated stat stabilization points that prevented exponential spikes. Invisible ceilings. He leaned back in his chair, heart pounding slowly. "It's not measuring us," he whispered under his breath. "It's managing us." A voice beside him made him glance sideways. Interesting choice of research. A tall man in a tailored navy suit stood there, silver association badge gleaming on his lapel. His eyes were calm, assessing. Taeyeon recognized the insignia. Data Oversight Division. They didn't handle public relations. They handled anomalies. "I'm just curious," Taeyeon said lightly. "Trying to understand how to grow better." The men smiled faintly. Growth requires patience. The system ensures stability. Stability. Such a gentle word for limitation. Taeyeon returned the smile, bowing slightly in deference. "Yes, sir." But inside, rage simmered. That night, he pushed his experiments further. Instead of only reallocating stats, he began intentionally hovering just below known growth thresholds. Strength 19. Then 20. The moment it hit 20, his interface glitched. Stats stabilization protocol engaged. Strength refused to rise further, no matter how many corrupted points he poured into it. He gritted his teeth. "Then I'll bypass the threshold entirely." He dropped strength to 5. Then immediately forced it to 25 in one violent reallocation. The backlash nearly knocked him unconscious. Blood vessels burst in his eyes as mana surged uncontrollably. Error accumulation, 83%. But strength stabilized at 25. The invisible ceiling had only triggered at incremental growth. It hadn't anticipated a leap. He lay on the floor, laughing weakly. The system didn't cap potential directly. It capped progression patterns. Gradual improvement was controlled. Sudden anomalies slipped through, at least temporarily. His thoughts drifted back to the apocalypse. The Sword Saint had been monstrously powerful. But predictable. Linear growth. Documented abilities. Fully optimized within system parameters. And the creatures that descended. They countered those parameters perfectly. What if the ranking system wasn't just limiting humanity? What if it was feeding information outward? His stomach twisted. The next piece fell into place when he accessed restricted dungeon footage through a borrowed terminal login, footage from 3 years in the future, archived for training purposes. He found the recording of the catastrophic dungeon break. The final battle. The moment when the top 10 unleashed everything. And paused. Frame by frame, he watched the system overlay active during the fight. Each SSS ranker's stats were displayed publicly for global morale. But at the moment of impact, their numbers flickered. Mana output capped at fixed values. Damage multipliers failed to exceed predefined ratios. It wasn't that they lacked power. It was that their power had boundaries. Boundaries imposed by the system itself. And when faced with an uncalculable threat, bounded strength wasn't enough. Taeyeon shut off the footage, hands trembling. They were never meant to surpass it, he murmured. The hierarchy wasn't a ladder. It was a cage. And the higher you climbed, the tighter it became. The next step required something drastic. Exposure. Public contradiction. He chose his target carefully. Han Seojin. Rank 312 globally. B-rank prodigy. Media darling. Known for his lightning affinity and flawless dungeon record. Scheduled to demonstrate his abilities at a public exhibition raid, a low-level dungeon cleared for spectator broadcast. Perfect stage. Taeyeon submitted an official duel challenge through the association portal. An F-rank challenging a B-rank. The request went viral within hours. The comments were merciless. Delusional. Clout chasing. Probably a bet. Seojin himself responded on live stream with a polite chuckle. I admire his courage, he said smoothly. But the ranking system exists for a reason. Exactly. The duel was approved as a controlled demonstration event, framed as entertainment rather than serious competition. On the day of the match, the arena buzzed with anticipation. Spectators filled the stands. Holographic screens displayed both combatants' profiles. Han Seojin, rank 312, B-class Lightning Knight. Jin Taeyeon, rank 9999, F-class. Laughter rippled through the crowd. Taeyeon stepped into the arena calmly. His countdown ticked in the corner of his vision. Correction protocol, 8 hours 13 minutes and 22 seconds. He ignored it. This wasn't about corrupted points. It was about exposing the lie. Seojin entered to applause, electricity crackling playfully along his fingers. You're brave, Seojin said quietly as they faced each other. But this will end quickly. Taeyeon tilted his head. Is that your power speaking, he asked softly, or your number? The referee signaled. The match began. Seojin moved first, lightning bursting from his feet, propelling him forward in a blur. The air cracked with thunder as he swung a blade infused with voltage. To the audience, it looked instantaneous. To Taeyeon, it was predictable. Because Seojin's stats were visible to him now in faint ghost text, courtesy of his corrupted interface. Strength, 48 agility, 72 mana output, capped at 300 units per burst capped. Taeyeon shifted his agility from 18 to 40 in a single reallocation. The system screamed in protest. Error accumulation, 89%. But his body obeyed. He sidestepped the lightning slash effortlessly. Gasps filled the arena. Seojin frowned, adjusting his stance. He unleashed a barrage of electric projectiles, each calibrated to stun. Taeyeon didn't dodge this time. He walked forward through them. Because he had shifted points into vitality, spiking his resistance beyond B-rank durability thresholds. The electricity dispersed harmlessly across his skin. What? Seojin's composure cracked. Taeyeon closed the distance and delivered a simple palm strike to Seojin's chest. Not flashy. Not explosive. Just precise. Seojin flew backward, crashing into the barrier wall. Silence swallowed the arena. The holographic display flickered violently. Rank 9, 999, glitched. Undefined. Seijin struggled to stand, rage replacing disbelief. He activated his ultimate technique, Thunderclap Domain. Storm clouds materialized above the arena, lightning striking randomly within a controlled radius. The audience roared in excitement. Taeyeon looked up at the forming storm. He remembered another sky. Cracking open. Red eye staring down. Bounded power wouldn't save them. So he stepped into the storm. And forced every corrupted point he had left into strength. Strength, 2550. His muscles screamed. Bones creaked under sudden pressure. Error accumulation, 94%. The lightning struck him directly. The ground shattered beneath his feet. When the smoke cleared, he was still standing. And Seijin's domain flickered, destabilizing. Because the system couldn't reconcile the damage calculation. An F-rank enduring B-rank ultimate output exceeded permitted tolerance. Taeyeon moved. One punch. The storm collapsed instantly. Seijin hit the ground unconscious. The arena was dead silent. Then chaos erupted. How? That's impossible. System malfunction. Officials rushed onto the field, scanning Taeyeon repeatedly. Rank, F, level, 7, no visible anomalies. But the outcome contradicted every predictive model. Taeyeon stood calmly as medics carried Seijin away. He didn't smile. Because he felt it. The system's gaze. Heavy. Focused. In the VIP observation room above the arena, executives watched the replay in grim silence. That output is statistically impossible, one muttered. Another adjusted his glasses. His growth curve doesn't match his rank. A third leaned forward. Run anomaly diagnostics. The central monitor glitched briefly before stabilizing. Subject, Jean Taeyeon. Designation, System Contaminant. The room fell quiet. Contaminant, the first executive repeated. An external variable destabilizing ranking equilibrium, the analyst replied coldly. If left unchecked, he could compromise structural integrity. Can the system correct him? A pause. It has attempted correction twice. Failed. Silence thickened. Outside, Taeyeon exited the arena into a swarm of reporters. Was it luck? Hidden artifact? Are you secretly higher rank? He simply said, the ranking system isn't absolute. That single sentence spread like wildfire across networks. For the first time since its creation, doubt entered public discourse. That night, as he stood on his apartment balcony overlooking the city lights, his interface pulsed crimson. Correction protocol, 1 hour 2 minutes and 11 seconds. The countdown was nearly finished. The sky above seemed too still. Too calm. He clenched his fists slowly. Go ahead, he whispered into the darkness. Try to correct me. Behind layers of code invisible to human eyes, alarms rang. Because the hierarchy had been challenged publicly. And the cage had begun to crack. The countdown did not tick anymore. It hunted. What had once been a silent timer in the corner of Jean Taeyeon's vision now pulsed like a heartbeat, its number shrinking faster each hour. As if something on the other side of reality had grown impatient. Correction protocol, 5 hours 12 minutes and 44 seconds 5 hours 12 minutes and 43 seconds 5 hours 12 minutes and 41 seconds. It skipped seconds. It skipped logic. And Taeyeon felt it, like invisible fingers tightening around his throat. Ever since the public duel with Han Seijin, the world had shifted subtly. News networks debated whether the ranking system required recalibration. Online forums were filled with conspiracy threads. Some claimed Taeyeon possessed a hidden relic. Others insisted the association rigged rankings for political leverage. But the association itself remained silent. Too silent. That silence terrified him more than open hostility. He continued entering dungeons. He continued forcing system errors. Because stopping now would only delay the inevitable. If the system wanted to correct him, it would do so whether he hid or fought. So he chose to fight. Inside an E-rank industrial dungeon, a sprawling abandoned factory overtaken by mana corrosion, Taeyeon stood before a swarm of metallic insect-type monsters. Their carapaces were reinforced with condensed iron mana, resistant to blunt force. Normally, a coordinated team would be required. Taeyeon walked forward alone. He activated minor physical reinforcement 3 times. Pain surged through his veins. He dragged strength upward beyond its temporary cap. He redirected points mid-stride, allowing agility to spike and drop in unpredictable bursts. The system glitched violently around him. Error accumulation, 96%. The factory lights flickered. The insects froze mid-motion for a fraction of a second, like lag in a broken simulation. And then he moved. His fists shattered chitin. His kicks tore through steel plating. He wasn't fighting monsters anymore. He was attacking the seams of reality itself. Each time he destabilized the system, the countdown accelerated. Correction protocol, 3 hours 2 minutes and 11 seconds. Something was changing. He felt watched. Not by cameras. Not by the association. By something embedded in the framework of existence. It started with a whisper. The next dungeon he entered was classified as D rank, a flooded subway system pulsing with stagnant mana. Taeyeon accepted the mission under a borrowed squad ID, careful to avoid unnecessary attention. But halfway through the run, something felt wrong. The mana density was too stable. The monsters too quiet. His countdown flickered. Correction protocol, 59 minutes and 59 seconds. He stopped walking. The tunnel lights dimmed. The air grew heavy. And then, footsteps. Slow. Measured. Echoing from the darkness ahead. Not the uneven scuttle of a dungeon beast. Not the roar of a corrupted entity. Human footsteps. A figure emerged from the shadows. Tall. Cloaked in black. Face concealed behind a smooth porcelain mask etched with a single vertical line down its center. Its presence did not register on Taeyeon's monster detection sense. It did not display a rank. It did not display stats. It was blank. You have exceeded acceptable deviation thresholds, the figure said calmly. The voice was neither male nor female. It was layered. Mechanical. Harmonized. Taeyeon's breath slowed. You're not part of the dungeon. Correct. The mask tilted slightly. I am an administrator. The word sent a chill down his spine. Administrator. Not an association title. Not a public role. This was something deeper. Your existence introduces instability, the administrator continued. The system has attempted automated correction. Manual intervention is now required. Taeyeon laughed softly. So the system has enforcers now. We maintain balance. By killing anomalies. By preserving structural integrity. The subway tunnel trembled faintly. Taeyeon realized something horrifying. The dungeon wasn't malfunctioning. It was being overwritten. The administrator stepped forward. No visible weapon. No aura. But the air warped around it as if bending to its authority. Reintegration will be painless, it said. Taeyeon felt his stats fluctuate involuntarily. Strength dropping. Agility resetting. Vitality compressing. It wasn't attacking him physically. It was editing him. He staggered back, teeth gritted. You're not code, he hissed. The mask reflected faint red light. I am authority. That was the moment Taeyeon understood. The system wasn't a self-contained program. It was governed. Managed. By external intelligence. And these administrators were its hands. The administrator lifted a hand. The space between them fractured into geometric patterns, like a shattered mirror. Taeyeon's HP dropped by 30% instantly. No impact. No strike. Just deletion. He forced corrupted points into vitality to stabilize himself. Error accumulation, 99%. The subway walls cracked as mana surged violently. You cannot exceed assigned parameters, the administrator stated. Taeyeon's eyes burned. Watch me. He overlapped minor physical reinforcement 5 times. Mana circuits screamed. Blood streamed from his nose. He forced every corrupted point into strength and agility simultaneously. The system interface convulsed. Then, something new appeared. Authority conflict detected. The administrator moved. Too fast. Its hand passed through Taeyeon's shoulder, not physically, but dimensionally. A portion of his stat panel blinked out entirely. Strength, blank. He roared and tackled the administrator into a concrete pillar. For the first time, the masked figure staggered. You resist integration, it observed. Taeyeon grabbed the mask and slammed his forehead into it. Cracks spiderwebbed across porcelain. Because I remember, he growled. He remembered the crimson eye. He remembered the world ending. He remembered the system declaring failure. The administrator raised both hands. The entire dungeon began collapsing inward. Water from broken pipes surged through tunnels. Structural beams twisted like soft clay. If elimination is required, it said, environmental purge will suffice. Taeyeon realized it was willing to sacrifice the dungeon, and him with it. He couldn't outmuscle authority. So he did the only thing he could. He destabilized everything. Instead of reinforcing his stats, he dropped them all to 0. Strength, 0 agility, 0 vitality, 0 the system froze. An entity with 0 stats yet still conscious created a paradox. Error accumulation, 100%. The subway tunnel flickered violently between existence and void. The administrator paused. For the first time, uncertainty. Taeyeon poured every corrupted point back into a single attribute. Strength, 060. The backlash shattered the ground beneath him. He drove his fist forward. Not at the body. At the mask. The porcelain exploded. Beneath it, light. Not flesh. Not bone. A core of swirling code and sigils rotating like a miniature galaxy. The administrator's voice fractured. Authority breach, Taeyeon plunged his hand directly into the glowing core. Pain unlike anything he had ever experienced ripped through his arm. It felt like grabbing the sun. But he didn't let go. If this thing represented authority, then he would steal it. The core cracked. Fragments splintered outward, embedding into his palm like shards of burning glass. The administrator convulsed. Unauthorized, transfer, the light imploded. The masked figure disintegrated into motes of red energy. The collapsing subway froze mid-destruction. Silence fell. Taeyeon dropped to one knee, his arm smoking. His interface had transformed. Error accumulation, the number was gone. In its place, authority fragment acquired. Rank, F. The letter flickered violently. F error, his entire vision glitched. Far above the city, every digital ranking board shut down simultaneously. Global ranking server, offline. In public plazas, holographic top 100 lists dissolved into static. News anchors froze mid-sentence as their studio monitors went dark. What's happening to the system? Inside the association headquarters, alarms screamed. Core server instability. External authority breach detected. Executives stared at their screens in disbelief. On Taeyeon's interface, a new option pulsed faintly. Override. He laughed weakly, staring at his trembling hand. He could feel it. The fragment. It wasn't a stat boost. It wasn't a skill. It was control. Small. Incomplete. But real. For the first time since awakening, his rank stopped displaying F. It simply read, error. And for one terrifying, beautiful second, the system did not attempt to correct it. In the skies above, clouds trembled faintly, as if something vast had shifted its gaze. The dungeon around him stabilized, reality snapping back into place as though embarrassed by its own instability. Taeyeon rose slowly. His countdown was gone. Not paused. Gone. Replaced by a new message. Administrative oversight escalated. He exhaled, exhaustion weighing down every limb. The system had sent an enforcer. And he had destroyed it. No. He had absorbed it. He staggered toward the dungeon exit as emergency sirens echoed faintly in the distance. The world outside would be panicking. The ranking boards offline meant chaos in financial markets, guild contracts frozen, dungeon clearance authorizations suspended. Humanity's faith in numbers had just flickered. And somewhere, beyond visible reality, something had noticed. Taeyeon stepped into the daylight, eyes reflecting a faint red glow that hadn't existed before. "They're not just maintaining balance," he murmured quietly. "They're guarding something." The system wasn't cracking anymore. It was fighting back. And this time, it knew his name. The first thing Jean Taeyeon noticed after absorbing the administrator's authority fragment was silence. Not the absence of sound. The absence of interference. For years, no, for 2 lifetimes, his status window had felt like a cage hovering in front of his eyes. Numbers dictated possibility. Letters defined worth. Every stat increase passed through invisible filters before being approved. Now, when he summoned his interface, it didn't appear in polished blue. It appeared in fractured red. Rank, error authority fragment, 1% administrative access, partial, and beneath that, perception override, active. He blinked. The world shifted. As a pedestrian brushed past him on the sidewalk, faint text appeared over the man's head, not visible to anyone else. Name, civilian mana sensitivity, 0.2 potential growth ceiling, 3. Taeyeon froze. Potential growth ceiling. That metric had never existed in his previous interface. Another awakened walked by, a C rank with a guild emblem stitched onto his coat. Public rank, C displayed strength, 32 displayed agility, 28 but layered behind those numbers, true strength, 24 true agility, 21 system supplement, +8, +7. His stomach dropped. The C ranker's combat stats were inflated. Artificially. The difference wasn't massive, but it was deliberate. A boost applied by the system itself. Taeyeon exhaled slowly. So that's how you maintain the hierarchy. The system wasn't just capping lower ranks. It was amplifying higher ones. Balance wasn't natural. It was engineered. He walked through the city in a daze, observing everyone he passed. An A-rank telekinetic lounging outside a corporate building. Public mana output, 420 true mana output, 355 system amplification, +65 A B-rank speedster jogging past. Public agility, 71 true agility, 63 system amplification, +8. It was consistent. The higher the rank, the greater the artificial enhancement. And then he saw something that made his chest tighten. A teenage girl in an association training uniform, sitting alone on a bench near the guild district. Public rank, E displayed intelligence, 14 displayed mana, 9 true intelligence, 27 true mana, 21 growth ceiling, 60 limiter status, active limiter. She wasn't weak. She was suppressed. The system had cut her displayed stats nearly in half. He approached her slowly. She looked up nervously. "Are you Jean Taeyeon?" she asked quietly. Word of his duel had spread. "Yeah," he replied gently. "What's your name?" "Kong Mina." Her voice carried exhaustion far beyond her years. She explained hesitantly that no matter how hard she trained, her stats barely rose. She had awakened with extraordinary mana control, but every time she tried to push beyond E-rank thresholds, she hit invisible walls. The association told her she lacked innate capacity. But Taeyeon could see the truth floating above her head. Limiter status, active. He clenched his jaw. "Do you want to break it?" he asked. Her eyes widened. "Break, what? Whatever's holding you back." She stared at him as if he were insane. But desperation flickered behind her fear. That night, in an abandoned warehouse district far from surveillance grids, Taeyeon tested something new. He focused on his authority fragment. It pulsed faintly in his chest like a second heartbeat. When he activated perception override, Mina's limiter glowed faintly, a translucent band wrapping around her stat window. He reached toward it. Warning, unauthorized authority application. His arm trembled. He wasn't sure what would happen. But he pressed forward. The fragment flared. The limiter cracked. Mina gasped as her mana surged uncontrollably. Her intelligence stat flickered. 14, 18, 23. Her mana spiked violently. The warehouse windows shattered as raw energy pulsed outward. She collapsed to her knees, breathing heavily. What did you do?" she whispered. Taeyeon checked her interface. Limiter status, partially disabled. True stats now match displayed stats. For the first time in her life, the system reflected her real strength. Tears streamed down her face. I thought I was just bad." He shook his head. "They've been lying to you." Word spread quietly among low-rank circles. Not through official channels. Through whispers. There's someone who can break ceilings. Someone who sees the truth. Over the next month, Taeyeon found more like Mina. A D-rank swordsman whose growth ceiling was 80 but capped at 35. A C-rank healer with suppressed vitality scaling. Every time he used his fragment to crack a limiter, the backlash grew stronger. Authority fragment, 2%. It was growing. Not by absorbing administrators, but by rewriting permissions. Each liberated awakened gained power rapidly. And with that power, something unexpected happened. Minor dungeon outbreaks, random gate instabilities that once required elite intervention, were being cleared by these formerly suppressed fighters before they escalated. Neighborhoods once considered high risk stabilized. Guild monopolies faltered. The association noticed. Of course they did. News broadcasts shifted tone. An unidentified faction is interfering with regulated dungeon operations. Unauthorized stat modifications have been detected. Soon, his name was spoken with a different label. Terrorist. System destabilizer. The association held a press conference. The ranking system is the foundation of global stability, an executive declared solemnly. Individuals attempting to tamper with its integrity threaten all of humanity. Taeyeon watched the broadcast from the shadows of the warehouse. Mina and the others gathered around him. Threaten humanity? Mina whispered angrily. We're saving people. And they were. In one district, a sudden B-rank gate opened unexpectedly. Instead of waiting for top 500 clearance, Taeyeon's group mobilized immediately. Mina unleashed precise mana constructs far beyond E-rank expectations. The suppressed swordsmen moved with explosive acceleration. They cleared the dungeon in half the projected time. Civilians were evacuated without casualties. Videos of the fight leaked online. The public began asking questions. How are low ranks performing at that level? Are rankings inaccurate? Doubt crept into society's faith. And doubt was poison to control systems. That night, Taeyeon stood alone on a rooftop overlooking the city. His interface pulsed uneasily. Authority fragment, 3%. Administrative oversight, intensifying. He felt it again. That distant gaze. But it was no longer passive. It was calculating. As if adjusting a timeline. His breath slowed as realization struck him. In his previous life, the catastrophic dungeon break occurred 3 years after his initial awakening. But recently, mana density spikes across the globe had increased by 12%. Gate formation frequencies were rising. Too early. He accessed underground data streams through a liberated hacker awakened in his faction. Projected catastrophic event probability, advancing. The apocalypse wasn't fixed. It was scheduled. And the system was accelerating it. Punishment. He clenched the rooftop railing until metal bent. You can't stop me, he muttered to the sky. The wind carried no answer. But far above, beyond atmosphere, beyond satellites, something shifted. The ranking boards worldwide flickered faintly for half a second. Most people dismissed it as technical error. Taeyeon did not. Because in his interface, a new message appeared. Global Correction Protocol revised. Harvest window, advanced. Harvest. The word froze his blood. The ranking system wasn't just about order. It was about preparation. The elites, artificially inflated and plateaued. The suppressed, deliberately weakened. A controlled ecosystem. And when the time came, a harvest. His authority fragment pulsed violently, reacting to the word. For the first time since absorbing it, he felt resistance from within. As if the fragment itself was bound by higher command. He steadied himself. Then we grow faster, he whispered. Over the following weeks, his underground faction expanded. Not recklessly. Strategically. He targeted those with high true ceilings but active limiters. Each time he broke one, the backlash from the system intensified. Minor spatial distortions appeared near them. Glitches in public ranking boards became more frequent. Association enforcers increased patrols. And yet, dungeon outbreaks declined. Casualty rates dropped. Communities began quietly supporting the so-called terrorists. Graffiti appeared in alleyways. Numbers lie. Break your ceiling. Public opinion was shifting. Slowly. Dangerously. In the highest chamber of the association tower, executives gathered before a massive projection of fluctuating global mana charts. He's destabilizing the calibration curve, one said coldly. If this continues, the harvest alignment will desynchronize. Another adjusted his glasses. Then accelerate full-scale manifestation. A pause. That will cause casualties beyond projected tolerance. Acceptable loss. The order was given. Far above Earth's sky, invisible to humanity, a faint crack formed in reality. Not yet visible. But coming. On the rooftop, Taeyeon felt it. Like distant thunder before a storm. He looked at his growing faction below, Mina laughing for the first time without insecurity, fighters training without invisible ceilings. He closed his eyes. I won't let you turn us into numbers again. When he opened them, his rank still read error. And this time, he wore it like a crown. The sky cracked open 6 months too early. It began as a tremor in the upper atmosphere, a distortion too high for civilians to notice but impossible for satellites and mana detection arrays to ignore. Within seconds, every major city's emergency network lit up with the same notification. Unidentified gate formation detected. Threat level, SSS. Location, Central Capital Airspace. SSS. The highest classification ever assigned. In Taeyeon's previous life, that designation had only appeared once, on the day the world ended. But this wasn't that day. It wasn't supposed to be. Not yet. Taeyeon stood on the rooftop of an abandoned office building, wind whipping his coat as he stared up at the growing fracture in the sky. The crack shimmered like a spiderweb of light, slowly widening, bending clouds around it unnaturally. His authority fragment pulsed violently inside his chest. Global harvest window, accelerated. They're forcing it, he muttered. The ranking association wasted no time. Emergency broadcasts filled every screen worldwide. The top 10 were mobilized instantly, transport aircraft slicing through the sky, escorted by military drones. Media helicopters circled at a safe distance, broadcasting live to billions. This was not just a battle. It was a spectacle. Rank 1 descended first, the sword saint cloaked in radiant aura, blade humming with divine resonance. Rank 2 followed, a gravity manipulator capable of crushing entire city blocks with a gesture. Rank 3, a spatial mage whose portals cut through reality like silk. Each of them stepped forward beneath the widening gate like gods answering a challenge. Civilians cheered despite the fear. The top 10 are here. We're safe. Taeyeon felt something hollow twist in his stomach. Safe. He had watched these same heroes die. He had watched their numbers mean nothing. The gate split open fully. Darkness poured out, not chaotic, not wild, but controlled. A massive citadel of obsidian stone descended slowly from the fracture, suspended in the air as if gravity itself had been rewritten. Spires twisted upward into nothingness, and at its center, a pulsating core of black light throbbed like a heartbeat. An airborne dungeon. Unprecedented. The association declared immediate clearance authorization. The top 10 formed a coordinated assault squad. Cameras captured every angle as they ascended toward the floating citadel. Taeyeon moved. He slipped into the chaos below, blending among lower-rank support personnel. With perception override active, he watched the top 10's true stats flicker above them. Public strength, 890 true strength, 760 system amplification, plus 130 public mana output, 1200 true mana output, 980 system amplification, plus 220. Every one of them bore enhancements. They were strong. But not as strong as they appeared. And worse, they were capped. Their growth ceilings glowed faintly in red. The dungeon gate stabilized, forming a portal beneath the floating citadel for entry. Only ranks A and above were authorized. Taeyeon stepped forward anyway. His rank still displayed error. Security scanners hesitated when reading him. Rank data unavailable. Administrative conflict detected. The system lagged. Just long enough. He slipped through. Inside, the dungeon was not stone and corridors as expected. It was calculation. The walls shimmered with shifting numeric glyphs. The floor beneath his feet felt less like rock and more like compressed data. The top 10 advanced confidently, unleashing probing attacks to test resistance. The dungeon responded. Not with monsters. With mirrors. 10 towering constructs formed in the central chamber, each reflecting the aura of one ranker. When rank 4 launched a blazing inferno, the construct mirrored it perfectly, same output, same scaling, same cooldown pattern. The attack collided midair and cancelled out. Murmurs of confusion rippled through the squad. Adaptive mimicry. Rank 6 muttered. No, Taeyeon whispered from the shadows. Optimization. The dungeon wasn't copying them. It was reading their system profiles. Each elite unleashed their signature techniques, but every move was anticipated, calculated, countered. The gravity manipulator found his fields inverted. The spatial mage's portals redirected against her own team. Within minutes, the battle turned. Rank 8 fell first, crushed beneath amplified gravity equal to his own maximum output. Rank 5 followed, impaled by a spatial distortion matching her attack frequency. Panic began to seep through the ranks. This dungeon is scaling to us. Impossible, it's exceeding SSS parameters. Taeyeon stepped forward at last. Of course it is, he called out. The sword saint turned sharply, recognizing him. You, he said coldly. This area is restricted. Taeyeon ignored the hostility. Your power is measured, he continued, voice steady. Defined. Capped. The dungeon knows exactly how strong you are. The constructs advanced again, their strength increasing proportionally to the elite's outputs. You think raw output wins? Taeyeon asked. The system made you predictable. Rank 2 roared, slamming a gravitational singularity into his mirror. The mirror responded with identical force. The singularities collided. The shockwave shattered half the chamber. Rank 2's body crumpled under the backlash. Silence. The sword saint's blade trembled faintly. You speak treason, he said. I speak truth, Taeyeon replied. He activated perception override fully. For the first time, he projected what he saw. The true stats of the top 10 flickered visibly around them, their artificial boosts highlighted in crimson. Gasps echoed through the chamber. What is this? Our amplification. The dungeon core pulsed brighter. Because the illusion was breaking. Taeyeon stepped toward the center. You were never meant to surpass your limits, he said quietly. You were meant to be harvested at peak efficiency. The word hung in the air. Harvest. The constructs shifted formation, merging into a single colossal entity, an avatar of the dungeon core. It did not mirror one ranker. It calculated all of them simultaneously. Rank 1 charged, blade blazing brighter than ever. The avatar caught it between 2 fingers. Public strength, 950 true strength, 800. The avatar's strength surged to 960. The sword saint's eyes widened. His blade shattered. He fell. One by one, the remaining elites collapsed, overpowered by reflections of their own maximum parameters. Taeyeon stood alone before the towering core avatar. Its voice resonated not in sound but in code. Anomaly confirmed. Rank undefined. Power unbounded. For the first time, the dungeon could not calculate him. He did not wait. He did not reallocate stats gradually. He did not reference public scaling. He erased the concept of rank entirely. Strength, agility, vitality, he blanked the fields. He fought without numbers. He poured authority into motion itself. Each step shattered predictive algorithms. Each strike distorted the chamber. The avatar attempted to assign values to him. Estimate failed. Calculation overflow. Taeyeon leapt, driving his fist into the dungeon core at the entity's chest. Pain erupted through his entire body as backlash surged. The core screamed in fragmented code. He pressed harder. "Stop measuring me," he growled. The authority fragment flared violently, wrapping his arm in crimson light. The avatar disintegrated, layer by layer. The chamber began collapsing inward. Reality flickered. And then, the core shattered. A shockwave rippled outward, not just through the dungeon, but through the system itself. Across the globe, ranking boards glitched simultaneously. Public screens flickered from gold to static. Guild monitors displayed error in massive red letters. Handheld rank devices emitted piercing alarms. In the association's control room, servers overloaded. What just happened? Global rank synchronization failure. Back inside the collapsing dungeon, Taeyeon fell to one knee as debris dissolved into nothingness. The floating citadel outside began to crumble, fragments evaporating midair. On live broadcast, billions watched in stunned silence as the SSS rank structure disintegrated. The top 10 lay unconscious but alive. Saved. By the very anomaly they had dismissed. As Taeyeon stumbled toward the exit portal, his interface flickered violently. Rank, error then, rank, blank. For one breathless second, the system did not display anything at all. Not F. Not error. Nothing. Outside, the sky sealed shut. Silence fell over the capital. Civilians stared upward, unsure whether to cheer or fear. In the association tower, executives watched the final feat of Taeyeon walking alone from the collapsing gate. "He destroyed it without rank scaling," one whispered. Another's voice trembled. "He bypassed calculation entirely." Far above Earth's atmosphere, invisible to all, a much larger fracture formed. Not visible yet. But widening. The harvest had been interrupted. And something beyond the system had taken notice. Taeyeon looked up at the sky one last time. "They're going to escalate," he murmured. Because this was no longer about dungeon clears. It was war against the architecture of reality itself. And the collapse of the top 10 was only the beginning. The sky did not shatter this time. It peeled. After the collapse of the airborne SSS dungeon, after the top 10 were carried away unconscious and the ranking boards across the world flickered between error and blank screens, the world held its breath. For 12 full seconds, no system notification appeared in anyone's vision. No rank updates. No dungeon alerts. No calibration messages. For the first time since the awakening era began, the system was silent. Jean Taeyeon stood alone in the empty plaza where the floating citadel had once loomed overhead. Dust still drifted through the air. Emergency sirens wailed in the distance, but they sounded far away, muted, irrelevant. His interface hovered before him, unstable. Rank, authority fragment, 4% administrative access, restricted global synchronization, failed. Then the world dimmed. Not physically. Existentially. The colors around him drained slightly, as if someone had lowered the saturation of reality itself. The air grew heavier. The noise of the city dulled into a distant hum. And above him, space folded inward. Not a crack. Not a gate. A convergence. The clouds spiraled unnaturally toward a single point directly overhead. Light bent around it, creating a halo of distortion. Taeyeon didn't move. He had felt this presence before. On the day the world ended. Behind the crimson eye in the sky. Now it descended slowly, condensing into form. Not a monster. Not a god in armor. But a figure woven from constellations and fractured numbers, its body composed of rotating sigils, flowing data streams, and flickering rank symbols dissolving into nothingness. Where a face should have been, there was only a shifting void filled with distant stars. When it spoke, the sound was not heard through ears. It was processed. Anomaly. The single word vibrated through Taeyeon's bones. Civilians nearby froze mid-step. Birds hung suspended in the air. Time had not stopped, but it had been deprioritized. Only Taeyeon remained fully aware. You have exceeded acceptable variance, the entity continued. Its voice was layered, ancient and mechanical all at once. Taeyeon met the void where its eyes should have been. So you finally decided to show up. The constellations within its form rearranged, forming a pattern resembling a crown. I am the Overseer. The word resonated across dimensions. I govern the ranking framework. I cultivate conflict. I optimize growth. Taeyeon's jaw tightened. You feed. The Overseer did not deny it. Competition produces acceleration. Acceleration produces evolution. Evolution produces energy. Images flashed in Taeyeon's mind, guild rivalries, ranked tournaments, desperate dungeon rushes to climb the global board. Despair produces even greater yield, the Overseer added calmly. Taeyeon felt something cold coil in his stomach. The apocalypse, he said slowly. Scheduled harvest. The words dropped like a verdict. The sky above flickered, revealing a faint outline of something vast beyond Earth's atmosphere, an immense structure suspended in cosmic darkness, connected to countless worlds by threads of light. Each civilization is granted a ranking framework, the Overseer explained. Structured conflict ensures exponential growth within manageable parameters. At peak maturation, harvest occurs. Energy is reclaimed. The cycle continues. Taeyeon's fists trembled. So we were livestock. You were promising. The calmness in that statement ignited something violent inside him. He remembered the little girl beneath the rubble. He remembered the Sword Saint's blade shattering. He remembered dying, believing humanity had simply been too weak. It wasn't our weakness, he whispered. It was your cage. The Overseer tilted slightly. Your regression was unintended. Taeyeon's breath caught. Explain. At the moment of scheduled harvest, your despair exceeded projected thresholds. Emotional output destabilized local calibration. A rollback was initiated to preserve system integrity. Taeyeon laughed once, harsh and broken. So I was a bug. A fluctuation. He stared up at the cosmic being. And now? You have demonstrated irregular adaptability. You have absorbed administrative authority. You operate outside standard calculation. The Overseer's form expanded slightly, stars within it flaring brighter. Such variables are rare. A pause. Join me. The word echoed across the frozen city. Become Administrator Prime for this world. Guide the harvest. Refine the hierarchy. Preserve select individuals at your discretion. Taeyeon felt the authority fragment in his chest pulse violently in response. The offer carried weight. Power. Control. If he accepted, he could choose who lived. Who died. He could reshape the hierarchy. No more F-rank humiliation. No more suppression. He could stand above the system. The Overseer continued. You have witnessed the inefficiencies of unmanaged despair. Under your governance, suffering can be minimized. Yield maximized. Order preserved. For a fleeting moment, temptation flickered. If harvest was inevitable. If the Overseer could not be destroyed. Perhaps guiding it was better than resisting it. He imagined Mina. He imagined the suppressed awakened he had liberated. He imagined selecting a small group to survive. A new world built from chosen few. His heart twisted painfully. That wasn't freedom. That was the same cage with a different warden. You think I want to rule your slaughterhouse? He asked quietly. The Overseer did not respond immediately. Conflict is the natural state of growth, it said instead. Without ranking, stagnation ensues. Taeyeon's eyes burned. You didn't create growth, he said. You created comparison. Memories flooded his mind, children awakening and immediately checking where they stood on the global board. Guild members abandoning teammates for higher-ranked squads. Lower ranks denied access to resources because their numbers weren't efficient. You taught us to measure our worth in digits, he continued. To hate those above us. To despise those below. The Overseer's constellations shifted again. Competition accelerates development. And despair accelerates death. The plaza trembled faintly. You fed on it. Yes. There was no shame. No malice. Just function. Taeyeon felt the weight of 2 lifetimes pressing down on him. You call it harvest, he said. I call it extinction. The overseer extended a hand formed of swirling galaxies. Your resistance is inefficient. The sky above split slightly, revealing a vision of the future if he refused. Multiple SSS-ranked gates opening simultaneously. Continents overwhelmed. The top 10 failing again. Except sooner. Much sooner. You cannot erase the framework, the overseer said calmly. Your power originates from it. To destroy the ranking system is to destroy your authority. Taeyeon glanced at his interface. Authority fragment, 4% rank, the overseer was right. Every advantage he possessed, regression, corrupted points, authority override, came from system instability. If he erased the system entirely, he would lose everything. His power. His fragment. Perhaps even his second life. The overseer's voice softened slightly. Accept governance. Guide evolution. Avoid unnecessary annihilation. For a moment, Taeyeon felt small. Insignificant before a being that managed entire civilizations. What was one human against cosmic architecture? Then he remembered something simple. The girl under the rubble had not been a number. She had been a child. His death had not been data. It had been pain. He straightened. I'd rather be powerless in a free world, he said slowly, than powerful in your prison. The overseer's form flickered. Emotional logic. Human logic. He stepped forward. You said I destabilized your calibration because of despair. Yes. Then maybe that's your flaw. The authority fragment flared brightly in his chest, responding to his resolve. You built a system that feeds on competition and pain, he continued. You didn't account for someone who would rather burn it all down than climb it. The overseer's voice deepened. Erasure of the ranking framework will trigger systemic collapse. Mana regulation will fail. Dungeon gates will destabilize unpredictably. Casualties will exceed harvest projections. Taeyeon swallowed. I know. Then why persist? He looked up at the distorted sky. Because as long as it exists, you control the outcome. A long silence followed. The constellations within the overseer dimmed slightly. You intend full system erasure? Yes. Even at the cost of your abilities? Yes. The word did not waver. The overseer's hand withdrew. Then you choose entropy. Taeyeon shook his head. I choose uncertainty. The overseer's form expanded, filling the sky. Uncertainty breeds chaos. Maybe, Taeyeon said softly. But chaos belongs to us. For the first time, something like irritation rippled through the cosmic being. Resistance will be corrected. The sky above pulsed ominously. Massive mana spikes erupted across the globe simultaneously. Gate formation signals flared in dozens of cities. The apocalypse timeline had accelerated again. The overseer began to fade back into the distortion, its voice echoing one final time. Your world will break without structure. Taeyeon watched it recede. Then we'll rebuild without you. As the presence vanished, time resumed. Civilians gasped, unaware of what had transpired. Emergency alerts flooded devices worldwide. Multiple high-rank gates detected. Simultaneous outbreaks imminent. Taeyeon stood alone in the plaza, heart pounding. His interface flickered violently. Administrative conflict escalated. Core access pathway identified. A faint coordinate pulsed in the corner of his vision, somewhere beyond physical space. The system's core. The source of the ranking framework. He closed his eyes briefly. If he went there, if he tore it apart, there would be no more corrupted points. No more authority fragment. No more regression. Just raw humanity facing unregulated mana. He opened his eyes again. The sky above shimmered ominously as new cracks began forming. The harvest had begun early. And this time, he would not allow a rollback. He would not accept governance. He would not climb the hierarchy. He would erase it. Even if it meant erasing himself with it. When the first of the accelerated gates tore open above the eastern district, Jin Taeyeon did not run toward it. He looked past it. Beyond the screaming sirens. Beyond the rising smoke. Beyond the fear spreading across the city like a living thing. In the corner of his vision, the coordinate the overseer had unintentionally revealed pulsed in faint red light. Core access pathway identified. It wasn't a location on Earth. It was a layer beneath existence. The backbone of the ranking framework. Taeyeon stood at the center of the plaza where he had spoken to the overseer only moments before. Around him, civilians fled as the sky fractured in multiple places. S-rank guilds mobilized. The association broadcast emergency stabilization orders. The world was spiraling toward premature harvest. And the only way to stop it was not to fight the gates. It was to tear out the architecture feeding them. He closed his eyes. Authority fragment, 4% corrupted points, 38 administrative access, partial. He inhaled slowly. Then he pressed both palms against the air in front of him and activated every fragment of stolen authority at once. Reality screamed. The space before him fractured like a mirror struck by a hammer. Not outward, but inward. Layers peeled back, revealing a depthless void threaded with luminous lines of data. The plaza dissolved. The city vanished. Taeyeon stepped forward into the fracture. The world behind him collapsed into a thin slit of light, and sealed. Silence swallowed him whole. He stood suspended in a dimension that had no ground and no sky. Endless panels floated in every direction, status windows, ranking charts, stat distributions, dungeon generation formulas, each one rotating slowly in geometric perfection. It was beautiful. Terrifying. This was the system's core dimension. The engine room of civilization. Every awakened stat window was here, replicated in vast, infinite arrays. Every ranking recalculation passed through these floating algorithms. Threads of mana flowed like rivers between panels, feeding into a colossal structure in the distance, a spherical nexus composed of interlocking numeric rings. The ranking algorithm. At its center pulsed a faint crimson star. The overseer's anchor point. Taeyeon felt impossibly small. Then the dimension reacted. Red warning sigils ignited across the floating panels. Unauthorized core access detected. Anomaly present. They arrived without footsteps. Administrators. Hundreds of them. Each descending from different vectors in perfect synchronization, porcelain masks gleaming under the pale code light. Their forms were sharper here, less human, more abstract, limbs extending and retracting like living equations. You persist in destabilization, their layered voices echoed in unison. Taeyeon clenched his fists. I'm done destabilizing, he said quietly. I'm ending it. The administrators moved. Not physically. They rewrote the space around him. Gravity inverted. Vectors twisted. His stat panel appeared forcibly before him. Strength, 74 agility, 69 vitality, 72 mana, 81 reintegration required, they declared. His stats began locking one by one. Strength, locked. Agility, locked. He gritted his teeth and forced corrupted points into the locks, cracking them open. The dimension flickered violently. Error propagation, rising. The administrators attacked simultaneously, each projecting strands of authority designed to sever anomalies at the root. The strands sliced through floating panels, reshaping variables mid-flight. Taeyeon dodged between shards of code, feeling slices of reality graze his skin. Each contact threatened to erase a stat, to zero out a parameter permanently. He retaliated not with technique, but with chaos. He overlapped skills that did not belong together. Reinforcement layered over mana, compression layered over stat reallocation mid-motion. His interface glitched violently. Corrupted points, 45, 30, 50. The numbers fluctuated as he absorbed stray errors from damaged panels around him. He grabbed a floating ranking chart and hurled it like a blade. It sliced through 3 administrators, destabilizing their masks. They reformed instantly. You cannot defeat order with instability, they said. Taeyeon laughed breathlessly. Watch me. He sprinted toward the central algorithm sphere. The administrators swarmed, merging into larger composite entities to block his path. One massive construct descended before him, composed of hundreds of masked faces fused into a singular entity. Core interference prohibited. It extended a hand, and reality flattened around Taeyeon like a crushing press. HP plummeted. Bones cracked. He tasted blood. The system tried to isolate him, to reduce him to defined parameters. He did the opposite. He dropped every stat to 0 again. Strength, 0 agility, 0 vitality, 0 mana, 0. The core dimension froze for half a breath. An entity existing with 0 stats but maintaining consciousness created infinite recursion in the ranking algorithm. Calculation loop detected. The composite administrator faltered. Taeyeon poured everything back in, but not to previous values. He overloaded. Strength, 0 500 agility, 0 700 vitality, 0 600 mana, 0 1200. The numbers didn't stabilize. They kept climbing. Because he refused to cap them. He forced corrupted points beyond their own limits, converting authority fragment energy into raw stat inflation. Panels shattered around him as his presence warped the dimension itself. The composite administrator disintegrated under the pressure of unbounded variables. Infinite variable overflow. The algorithm sphere pulsed violently in the distance. The overseer's voice rippled through the dimension. You will collapse the framework. Good, Taeyeon shouted back. He reached the sphere. Up close, it was incomprehensibly vast, rings of rotating data that defined every ranking in existence. He placed his hand against it. The system tried to respond with a final failsafe. Timeline reset protocol, initiating. The dimension trembled. Taeyeon felt it again. That pulling sensation. The rollback. Memories flickering. The day he died. The moment despair triggered regression. The overseer was attempting to rewind the world once more. Panels around him began reversing, numbers counting backward, damage undoing itself. No, he whispered. The first time, he had been dragged unwillingly through regression. This time, he refused. He anchored himself to a single memory. The girl beneath the rubble. Her terrified eyes. Her weight in his arms as he chose to shield her. He clung to that moment like a chain tied to existence. I won't go back, he growled. The rollback force intensified. Reality bent around him. His overloaded stats began destabilizing under temporal pressure. Strength, 1,200 900 400. He screamed and poured everything he had left into a singular act. He shattered the concept of ranking. Instead of altering numbers, he erased the variable itself. Rank, he deleted the category. The algorithm sphere convulsed. Without rank as a governing constant, every stat in existence became contextless. The infinite arrays of ranking charts collapsed inward. Calculation parameters exceeded finite limits. The overseer's voice fractured. Unbounded variables detected, Taeyeon pressed harder. He didn't try to calculate. He didn't try to optimize. He simply refused. Refused regression. Refused hierarchy. Refused harvest. The timeline reset protocol collided against his anchored will, and stalled. For the first time, the overseer encountered resistance it could not algorithmically predict. The sphere cracked. Light spilled outward in blinding waves. The administrators screamed in dissonant harmony as their forms unraveled. The core dimension began collapsing, not outward, but inward, devouring its own equations. Global ranking server, failure. Across Earth, every status window flickered violently. Ranks disappeared. Numbers scrambled. Guild halls went dark. Top 10 identifiers vanished. In hospitals, in dungeons, in classrooms, awakened stared in horror as their carefully curated stats dissolved into static. Back in the core, Taeyeon felt his authority fragment burning away. Authority fragment, 4% 2% 0% corrupted points, 200 0. His overloaded stats plummeted. Strength, 800 100 2015. He collapsed to his knees, clutching the cracking algorithm sphere. The overseer's presence flickered one final time. You choose extinction, it whispered. I choose freedom, Taeyeon rasped. The sphere imploded. White light consumed everything. There was no explosion. No sound. Just absence. When Taeyeon opened his eyes, he lay back in the plaza. The sky above was clear. The accelerated gates were gone. The fractures sealed. Civilians looked around in confusion. Emergency alerts vanished from devices. Status windows flickered once, twice, and then went blank. No ranks. No stat panels. No classifications. Just silence. Taeyeon tried to summon his interface. Nothing came. He laughed weakly, staring at the sky. He could feel it. The system was gone. No rollback. No correction. No harvest algorithm. Just raw, unregulated mana humming quietly in the atmosphere. Around him, Awakened panicked. My rank, it's gone. My stats aren't displaying. Guild leaders shouted into broken comm units. But beneath the fear, something else stirred. Possibility. The Overseer's architecture had collapsed under infinite variables. And this time, there would be no reset. Taeyeon closed his eyes briefly, exhaustion dragging him toward unconsciousness. He had no idea what would come next. Without the framework, dungeons might behave unpredictably. Growth might be chaotic. There would be casualties. Mistakes. Struggle. But the numbers would no longer decide who was worth saving. As darkness claimed him, one final thought lingered. The world would no longer be measured. It would simply be lived. When Jean Taeyeon opened his eyes, there was no interface waiting for him. No translucent panel hovering in the corner of his vision. No rank identifier. No stat breakdown. Only sky. Clear, endless blue stretching above the city as if nothing had ever been broken. For a moment, he wondered if he had failed. If the world had reset again without his memory. If the Overseer had won after all. He pushed himself up slowly from the plaza pavement. His body felt heavy, not the controlled heaviness of stat allocation, not the artificially enhanced density of amplified strength. Just human. Around him, chaos bloomed. People were staring into empty air, waving their hands frantically. My window's gone. Why can't I see my stats? What's my rank? Check the board. Screens mounted on nearby buildings flickered with error messages. The once glorious global ranking displays, those golden ladders of prestige, were nothing but static. The Ranking Association's emergency network broadcast across every device in the city. Remain calm. We are experiencing temporary system desynchronization. Please await recalibration. But even as the message repeated, it began to glitch. Temporary desynchronization. Taeyeon almost laughed. He tried to summon his status window one more time. Nothing answered. He focused, reaching for that familiar sensation in his chest, the authority fragment, the corrupted energy, the hum of ranking calculations. Silence. It was gone. All of it. He stood unsteadily and flexed his fingers. No stat overlay told him how strong he was. No number reassured him of his limits. He walked past a group of A-rank guild members, at least, they had been A-rank. Their expressions were pale. I can't measure my mana output, one muttered, sweat beading on his forehead. How are we supposed to take dungeon requests without classification? Another snapped. Across the street, a former S-rank healer stared at her hands in disbelief. My regeneration skill, it still works, but there's no cooldown timer. There was fear in her voice. Not because her power was gone. But because it was no longer quantified. The system had not erased abilities. It had erased measurement. And without measurement, hierarchy trembled. Within hours, the global economy shuddered. Guild contracts froze. Insurance clauses tied to rank invalidated instantly. Military protocols dependent on S-rank deployment collapsed into confusion. The elites felt it most. Those who had built empires on their numbers now stood equal, at least superficially, to the F ranks they had once ignored. Panic brewed in private boardrooms and luxury towers. But in the lower districts, the reaction was different. A young awakened who had been stuck at E rank for 5 years closed his eyes and focused. Mana responded. It didn't plateau. It didn't resist. It simply flowed. Taeyun walked through the city quietly, unnoticed among the hysteria. News drones buzzed overhead, reporting global magical anomaly and systemic collapse. He passed by Mina in the warehouse district. She was sitting cross-legged on the concrete floor, eyes closed, breathing slowly. When she opened them, she looked at him, not with fear, but with wonder. "It's different," she said softly. He nodded. Her mana no longer felt compressed. No invisible limiter constricted its expansion. "It's unstable," she admitted. "But it's not stopping." Around her, others experimented cautiously. A former D-rank swordsman swung his blade experimentally, testing how far his stamina would stretch without a numeric guide. There were mistakes. One young awakened overextended and collapsed from mana exhaustion, having no stat warning to alert him beforehand. Another misjudged his strength and shattered a training dummy entirely. Growth had become organic. Messy. Unpredictable. Human. The association attempted to regain control quickly. Emergency summits were called. Former top 10 members, now simply powerful individuals without titles, stood before cameras and urged order. "We must create a new classification standard," the Sword Saint declared, his voice steady but lacking the absolute authority it once carried. Without structure, society cannot function. But the words felt hollow. Because for the first time, structure wasn't descending from a glowing panel in the sky. It had to be built. Weeks passed. At first, dungeon breaks spiked erratically. Without the ranking system's predictive adjustments, gates formed in unfamiliar patterns. Guilds scrambled to adapt. But something unexpected happened. The gates no longer scaled precisely to the strongest nearby awakened. They were no longer tuned to harvest peak output. They behaved like natural disasters instead of calibrated tests. And natural disasters, while dangerous, did not cheat. Teams began organizing based on trust rather than rank. Combat strategies shifted from optimizing damage per second metrics to adaptive cooperation. A former B-rank tank discovered that without a system-imposed durability cap, his resilience improved gradually through real strain instead of fixed thresholds. A C-rank mage, long plateaued by artificial ceilings, felt her mana pool deepen week by week. It was slower. Less explosive. But it did not stop. Taeyun felt it too. The absence. The weight of his lost power. He tested himself quietly in abandoned training fields. His punches no longer shattered stone with algorithmic precision. His body no longer moved at impossible speeds. He tired. He sweated. He felt soreness the next morning. He was ordinary. And yet, he was alive. The authority fragment had burned away completely. Corrupted points were gone. There was no perception override to reveal hidden truths. For the first time in 2 lifetimes, he could not see ceilings. And that frightened him more than facing the overseer. Because now, there was no cosmic enemy to fight. Only humanity. Months rolled by. Society adjusted unevenly. Some former elites clung desperately to recreating numerical systems, private guild rating charts, unofficial combat metrics. But none carried the same absolute authority as the ranking framework. They were approximations. Suggestions. Not law. In schools, new awakened were taught mana control without referencing rank categories. Instructors emphasized adaptability over scaling thresholds. Competition did not vanish. But it changed. Instead of climbing a global ladder, awakened sought mastery in specific disciplines, swordsmanship, barrier construction, healing arts, without obsessing over relative numbers. In one quiet district, a group of children practiced basic mana shaping. Their teacher corrected posture and breathing rather than checking stat growth. Taeyun watched from a distance. He had expected chaos. He had expected collapse. Instead, he saw struggle. Learning. Trial and error. It was messy. But it belonged to them. One evening, as the sun dipped below the skyline, Mina approached him on the rooftop where everything had once begun. "You're weaker," she said bluntly. He smiled faintly. "Yeah." She studied him carefully. "You don't regret it?" He looked out over the city. Smoke no longer spiraled from emergency gates. The sky held no fractures. The air felt lighter. "I regret the people who'll get hurt while we figure this out," he admitted quietly. "But I don't regret breaking the cage." Mina nodded slowly. She had grown significantly stronger in the past few months, not explosively, not unnaturally, but steadily. "I can feel it," she said. "There's no ceiling anymore." He closed his eyes briefly. In his previous life, growth had been a race. Now, it felt like a journey. The former top 10 had adapted too. Without artificial amplification, they discovered their true baselines, and began rebuilding from there. Some struggled with the loss of prestige. Others found relief in shedding the pressure of maintaining an impossible number. The Sword Saint, once rank 1, now trained alongside mid-tier fighters without ceremonial distance. There was humility in the air. One night, alone in his small apartment, Taeyeon lay staring at the ceiling. He tried one last time to summon anything. Any fragment of system residue. Nothing came. He exhaled slowly. "Guess that's it," he murmured. No regression. No second chances. No cosmic intervention. Just life. As sleep crept in, something flickered at the edge of his vision. So faint he almost dismissed it as imagination. A single line of text. Not in blue. Not in red. Soft white. Manual growth mode activated. He froze. The words did not expand into panels. There were no stat bars. No ranks. Just that sentence. He sat up slowly. Manual. There was no overseer presence. No authority fragment. No algorithmic hum. The message did not feel imposed. It felt internal. He focused on his body. On his breath. On the faint soreness in his muscles from earlier training. He felt something subtle shift. Not a spike. Not an explosive surge. Just the quiet reinforcement of effort translating into strength. Directly. Without mediation. Without measurement. He laughed softly. The system had been erased. But growth itself had not. It had simply returned to its original state. Human. He stood and walked to the window, looking out at the sleeping city. Somewhere in the distance, a new gate shimmered faintly, but not violently. A team was already approaching it, coordinating calmly without waiting for a ranking clearance. This time, no one knew exactly how strong they were. And that uncertainty no longer belonged to a cosmic harvester. It belonged to them. Taeyeon touched the glass lightly. In his vision, the faint white text faded, leaving nothing behind. No numbers. No titles. No ceilings. He smiled. Because this time, when the world faced its next crisis, it would not be fighting for a place on a board. It would be fighting for itself. And this time, humanity controlled its own future.